Timing is everything, isn't it? When I was a little kid, I used to love to play kickball. And one Sunday, I was at the grocery store with my grandmother. Well, she wasn't. I didn't call her grandmother. I'm from West Texas. She was my meemaw. And I was at the store with my meemaw. And they had a great big receptacle. I can still, if I close my eyes, I can picture it. San Angelo, 1979. Skaggs Albertsons on Sherwood Way. And there was this big receptacle of big red, blue, multicolored balls, all for kickball. And what a fun game that was. And I asked my meemaw if I could have one of those. There was one of those that was blue, and I thought that'd be a great way to spend a Sunday afternoon, wouldn't it? Playing kickball out in the yard. Well, meemaw turned to me and said, "No, I can't." And I said, well, why not? It's not very much. I have enough in my allowance. "No, I can't because it's Sunday." And I said, "What? Sunday? You can't buy a kickball and play out in your yard on Sunday?" It was baffling to an 8 or 9-year-old mind at that time. So what was the deal? It was a thing called the Texas Blue Laws, meant to keep us from having too much fun or doing too much work on the Lord's Day, on Sunday. And so there were all kinds of things you couldn't do. You couldn't buy a car. You couldn't buy alcohol. You couldn't buy gasoline for a car. You couldn't buy a kickball. You couldn't buy a washing machine, although probably nobody cared about that one. Anyway, those laws were meant to encourage everybody to take a break and make the day more holy. Of course, they really didn't work. That's not how holiness works. It's not how Sunday works, and it's not how human beings work. But they weren't the first ones to try it. Today, in Mark chapter 3, we're going to see where Jesus runs into a similar frustration on a Sabbath day and running up into some Sabbath law problems. So grab a Bible, go over to Mark chapter 3, and we will dive right in. So in Mark chapter 3, starting in verse 1, this is what it says. "Another time Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, 'Stand up in front of everyone.' Then Jesus asked them, 'Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save a life or to kill?' But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, 'Stretch out your hand.' He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus." Okay, so can we just agree that the ending of this story is completely and utterly messed up? Verse 6, let's start at the end. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but let's just go straight to verse 6. In verse 6, they get so upset with Jesus that they decide to plot with the Herodians that they will kill him. Kill him, kill him. For what? For what? Well, let's go back up to verse 2. In verse 2 it says, some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. This was actually their hope all along. The only reason they had this interaction with him, the only reason they were there to talk to him on this Sabbath day, was not to bless him as a brother, which they were. These were all brothers in the faith. It was not to bless him as a brother. It was to catch him in a mistake. You ever felt like that? Like people who should be a blessing in your life and that you want to be a blessing in theirs, it just turns out all they're doing is looking for a reason to say, I knew that you were one of those crazy liberals or crazy conservatives or crazy whatever it is they want to accuse you of, right? Whatever that might be. Cowboys fans, Astros fans, whatever. I knew it. I knew you were rooting for the wrong team. I knew that you were going to do this wrong. I knew you were going to say that wrong. I knew you were going to make the wrong choice. I knew. And that's why I had my eye on you. Yeah. We've all known those people. It's kind of miserable to be around, and we need to make sure that we ourselves are never those people. Even in trying to be grace-oriented, Jesus-centered people, we can easily become people who are checking other people to make sure, are you gracious enough? Are you non-judgmental enough? I mean, it's devil gets us on both sides of the road, right? We either fall into this ditch or we fall into that ditch, and if I react to this one, I just become this one. He knows what he's doing, and he's got these guys in that kind of a trap. You see, they think that Jesus is this rogue rabbi who is not, well, I don't know if they would actually call him a rabbi because they probably don't want to give him that much official distinction, but a rogue teacher, and so they've got their eye on him. He's doing some things that they don't approve of because he's not doing them in the right way. That's not how we do things around here. Because timing is everything in the way that we think. There's something in human nature that we just, when things become important to us and when certain days become important to us, we start to say, you're not doing that right. Often, right? Holidays are coming up. I think I mentioned this a couple of videos back, that the holidays are coming up, and there will be somebody who's going to say, you're not carving that turkey right. You didn't put that tree up right. Don't you think that would have been better over there? You know what you do with those people, don't you? You social distance. No, you love them with the grace of Jesus. Anyway, but we all have those people in our lives, and if we don't have them in our lives, that's probably because we are those people, and somebody's thinking that they do have that person in their life. I think we all fall on both sides of that fence at different times because there are things important like that to all of us. And if we're not careful, we start to become nitpicky about those things. And maybe it started off right and it started off well, but it went in an unhealthy direction. Before we get too hard on the Pharisees, and in this moment they actually deserve whatever hits they take, but before we go too far, they started off in the right place. They wanted to make sure, because Israel had been through a time of testing and discipline because of idolatry during their time in Babylon. They were there because they had made huge mistakes in the way they abandoned their faith and abandoned their covenant to the Lord and violated that covenant. And they wanted to make sure that they never did that again. Okay? If you ever wonder why the Pharisees are such sticklers for the rules, that's why. They don't want to go back into captivity and into Babylon like their forefathers had to endure. And so from that point of view, I get that. You know why they didn't want to have that happen. But it made them hyper judgmental and hyper careful and hypersensitive to things in ways that just became really unhealthy, to say the least. And this is one of those, outcroppings of that problem. So they look at this guy and they see a man with a shriveled hand, right? Nah. I don't think they saw the man. I don't think they saw the hand. They didn't see him at all. What they saw was an opportunity to entrap Jesus. It's a setup. I'm not saying that they sent the man to Jesus, but they definitely are paying attention to everything Jesus does in regard to this man, because they know we can get this guy. They don't like what he's teaching. They don't like what he's practicing. They feel like he is getting too far out there, and he's claiming to be the Messiah, and Messiah would know better how to act than this guy. There's a time and a place, and this is not the time, and this is not the place, right? Yeah. And so they were very upset with the way that he did things because it wasn't their way. We'll come back to that. Anyway, so they start watching him, and he knows what's going on and knows why they care about what he's doing, and it doesn't slow him down. Let me just stop here, and just as a parenthetical, some of you might need to hear this. Maybe you are yourself dealing with some things like this in your own life of faith. Maybe you have people that, or experiences with people that just became too tightly wound, too religiously cranky, too judgmental, too harsh, and that's burned you, and it's hurt you, and it's gotten you into a place where you go, I don't know if I need this. I just want to do A, B, and C. I want to worship the Lord and serve the Lord. I want to feed the poor. I want to do this. I want to do that to God's glory. But I don't know if I need all this, if it's always going to be a stink. Let me just encourage you. Jesus in this moment is not right where you are in a total sense, but he's in a place like you. He is in a place where people are judging him constantly, where people are questioning whether or not he's helping people the right way, or whether or not he's helping the right people, or doing it at the right time and at the right place, and yada, yada, yada. So Jesus has been there, and Jesus has done that. And I think we can learn something from the way that Jesus handles it. And what Jesus does is he just keeps helping, serving, loving, and showing compassion, despite the fact that he knows that there are these buzzard-like judges over here on tree branches above his work, looking down, sneering, judging, and trapping, and bad talking. That's not an easy place to be, okay? It's not an easy place to be. And if that's where you are, then know that Jesus has been there. You probably already know that, right? But Jesus has been there, and Jesus is with you in this. And he is thankful that if you're going to get in trouble, it's because you're being like him. Paul says it is an honor. Jesus himself says, Matthew chapter 5, 11 and 12, it is an honor when we are in trouble because we're being just like Jesus. And so it doesn't make the hurt any less. It doesn't make the frustration just immediately go away. But know that you walk in the steps of Jesus when you show grace in moments when he would have shown grace, even if no one else will show it with you. Better to be lonely in grace than in great company and heart of heart. I could probably just hit stop right there, because that is what we need to get out of what happens with Jesus. But let's go ahead and look at the rest of this story. So he gets the man to stand up, and he says, stand up right here in front of everybody. And he looks around at these guys. In verse 4, he asks them, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil? Like what's important? What are your blue laws all about? You say your blue laws, they're like the blue laws. Your blue laws are about getting people to be more faithful to their family and to their church. Which is more faithful to your family and to your church? To do good or to do evil? Which is more faithful to your God? To do good or to do evil? Which would honor Sunday for us in terms of just our day of worship and everything, and when we celebrate the resurrection of Christ? What would honor Sunday more? Doing good, showing compassion, loving your neighbor, or standing there looking down your nose at somebody who's not loving right, who's not serving right, who's not doing this in the right time at the right place for the right people? You see? And that's his question. Which is more important on the Sabbath? To do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill? Do you think maybe Jesus knew already that they were going to plot his death when he chose his words? To save life or to kill? At this point in the conversation, that's known, that hadn't come up. It wasn't out loud. But on many occasions, Jesus would know what was in their hearts and know what was on their minds, and just put it out there. He would just say, I know what you're thinking. Let's just put that on the table for a second, and let's look at that, and let's talk about it. Sometimes Jesus is awkward. Right? Sometimes Jesus is awkward. Has he ever done that to you? Because he's done that to me, where you see something that he's talking about, something that he's done, maybe even moments like this, and you realize, I think I've made that mistake, right? And we've judged people for doing the good thing because they didn't do the good thing the right way, and right way usually means my way, right? Your way, not necessarily his way. And he could easily just take that and say, okay, let's take that and look at that, James. Let's dive into that. And he does that with them. He stands the man out there in front of them and says, so what's better? On a Sabbath, a day that we're going to honor the Lord and rest in his presence. What if I bring him rest from this disease? Would that be better? Or should I let him suffer? Would that be better? Should I do good or should I do evil? Equating negligence with evil. Which even people outside the Lord with no Judeo-Christian ethic, most of them know negligence is evil, right? Which is better? Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil? And they remain silent. Not their best moment. They just stand there. He says, well, which is it? Lawful? Good? Evil? Heal? Kill? What's the right one? What are we doing here? And they just stare. Grumpuses. They just fold their arms and stare. The next verse, he looked around at them in anger. Okay. Jesus got angry at times, and we get angry at times. What we do with our anger really matters. It really matters. And just because a particular anger, a source of anger for us is rooted in righteousness, and we would call that righteous indignation, doesn't mean we get to just do whatever we want with it. It doesn't mean that whatever we say next is justified. It doesn't mean that whatever we do next is justified. What we say and what we do with and in our anger really matters, because Paul warns us, Ephesians chapter 4, in our anger do not sin. Why does he warn us? Because more often than not we sin. Yeah. In their anger, they were sinning against Jesus. I mean, that is the root of their problem. So Jesus gets angry, but does he do with it what they did with it? No. No plots to kill them. No ground opening up and swallowing them whole. No lightning strikes. He's Jesus, not Zeus. So instead, his answer to their anger, their stubbornness, their pride, their arrogance is this. He looked around at them in anger and, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. And this deeply distressed tells us a lot about Jesus. Not deeply distressed like, I can't believe you people had this problem. Deeply distressed like, how can I wake you up? How can I open your eyes? He will talk about it before the cross when he looks over Jerusalem. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I long to gather you together like a hen gathers together her chicks. And he will talk about moments like this when they were so stubborn. Now he just wanted them to learn to love. He's distressed, not with a murder plot. He's not plotting murder. He's distressed because he has a plot to show them life, love, and compassion, and they just won't take it. They won't open their hearts up to it, because when we get really judgmental and when we get really prideful and when we get so sure that everyone else is doing it wrong, then in those moments we tend to make some of our worst, most stubborn decisions. That's where they are. So what does he do next? He looks at the man and he says, stretch out your hand. Let me see your hand. And the man takes his hand, that crumpled hand that just shriveled up, and he takes it and he opens it up. And can you imagine? You know, I've had this shoulder problem. I'm having problems that'll feel fine, and then all of a sudden it'll go back out of whack, ongoing for like a year and a half. If all of a sudden I could reach behind the seat and pick something up off the floor in my truck in the back seat, I think I might know without pain. If I could do that without pain, I think I might start to get a glimpse of what this man beheld as he looked at his open hand. And that hand, an open hand, which was the result of an open heart on the part of Jesus, said everything to those hard-hearted, arrogant men that needed to be said. What's lawful on the Sabbath? Stretch out your hand and let me show you. And it was life, it was love, it was healing, it was compassion. That's who Jesus is. That's who our God is. And in those moments when we are being hounded by those of pride and arrogance, whether they be religious or not, I mean, none of that matters. Where that pride and arrogance comes from is really, quite frankly, irrelevant. When we find ourselves at odds with people who are stubborn-hearted and hard-hearted and cranky and way too tightly wound, for whatever their reasons, it's important we don't join them. But instead, that light shines into that dark moment and shows the grace and the goodness of Jesus Christ. The theme of our study through all this book of Mark is to be more like Jesus. And this is one of those ways that I want to be more like Jesus, where I can see the light and be compassionate in moments when compassion is out of favor, loving and graceful when grace is out of favor. And sometimes I'm going to find moments where grace is out of favor with me, where I'm the one struggling with whether or not it's the right time or the right place. But this is what Jesus teaches us in Mark 3:1-6. It is always the right time for grace. It is always the right time for the love of God. It is always the right time to do the next right